about this whole concept of noble automation and intelligent automation in our space. And I'd like to just put it into context in the rest of these sessions and then tell you a story. And it's a story that involves drug running and crime and theft and technology and heroes. I promise, I'll tell you that whole story. But it's real, and that's the important part, is how does all this stuff come together? So yesterday and the day before, I said I'd like to have everyone just for a moment think about you're on a journey, and that journey that you're on maybe is to plow your way through the Amazon jungle and have an adventure and find treasure on the other side. Or maybe it's to climb Mount Everest and you want to get to the top of Mount Everest, or if you're really bold, K2, which I think is the second highest mountain right near Mount Everest. Or maybe it's to cross the Gobi Desert, you know, with a Jeep or whatever you're going to do. That is what business transformation is to me, to some extent. It is a journey. It is a challenge. It's a series of barriers that you have to overcome and work through. And while it may not have the glamour of climbing to the Mount Everest, you won't die in business transformation, which a lot of people do climbing Everest. And this session, this 3-day session, I look at as you're at base camp. We'll use Everest for an example. You're at base camp. And at base camp, you want to know what tools, what guides, what help you can get to make this journey to go to the top of the mountain or through the jungle. And what you're hearing in each one of these presentations is a potential tool or a potential Sherpa you can reach out to, or just read everything that Sherpa's written and understand these tools and techniques, and then figure out how they fit in your individual journey. Because the only thing dumber than taking on a really risky journey is to do so without learning from what other people have done. Don't make the same mistakes that they've made or I've made or anyone else has made. I'd like to know your mistakes as well, so I don't make those same ones. So that's what this 3-day session is in my view. So some of the sessions, you'll either you watch them or you go back and look at them. You should be taking detailed notes about some of those sessions because they speak directly to you. They speak directly to the challenge that you're facing or you anticipate facing. And others, you know, drink a cup of coffee and a cup of tea and say, well, that one doesn't, you know, apply to me. That's not my specific world. But I hope that several of these sessions have given you the will to go back and say, I got to write 3 or 4 or 5 points down from those, because those can be really useful. And that's the way I view it. And we got 3 more of those to go for the rest of the day. So I'm going to tell you a story right now about what intelligent automation looks like. And if you watched my presentation on the first day, what I call helping humans be heroes, and how that can actually look in an environment. The story I told on Monday was about financial services. This is a story that's almost, it's just surprising that something like this would happen to a person who talks about noble automation. But that's the story I'm going to tell you. So let me click over to sharing my screen. Okay, Brian, are you on? Can you see what's popping up on my screen?
I am on. I can't see anything. Got you. We have a nice shot of Superman.
Okay. All right. So unfortunately, I don't know how to get rid of the menu bar at the bottom of my screen. That's all right. That's not important. It's not going to make a difference. All right. So if I could, let me start the story this way. This is a story, a real story, about how humans can be helped to be heroes with technology. And I've talked earlier about what do I mean by what a hero actually is. And a hero is not flying through the sky with a cape and X-ray vision. A hero is a person who is able to bring themselves to a higher level of performance than the people around them, or more importantly, a higher level of performance than they themselves have been able to achieve. And maybe it's a transcendent self, you know, beyond where they were. And that can be as simple as, I've never figured out how to put a formula into a spreadsheet from a really young employee, or maybe it's running a team meeting, you know, as a young manager or a young participant on a meeting, or maybe it's a manager running multiple teams for the first time, or maybe it's Elon Musk buying Twitter. That's a huge undertaking. I don't know if you saw that this morning in the news, but it looks like that's what he's going to do. Each one of those steps is a major growth step. And that is what being a hero is. And that's what I fundamentally believe in my years of work, that when people believe they are able to do that at work, when they are able to be heroic, they rise to a new level of performance, and so do our companies. And so that's what this story is about. So let me move forward. Oh, sorry. Okay. So here's the way this story starts. I was leaving the Navy, which you may have heard from Monday or Tuesday. I was leaving the Navy, graduating from business school, and that's great. That was exciting. That was a big deal for me. I was the first kid in my family to go to college. And I was about to make this big transformation, big life transformation. At least that's what I thought. But I had one huge problem to graduate. So I'd made it through the classes and done the tests and all the stuff I had to do. But in order to graduate, you had to take these final exams. And these final exams had to be written in longhand. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when's the last time you wrote a lot of stuff other than happy birthday in a birthday card in longhand? But I realized my 2 years of education in graduate school were going to come down to me looking like an idiot who couldn't write. And the reason for that is not only can I not write, I'm left-handed. So when you're left-handed and you put an ink pen in your hand and you write, especially when you're nervous taking a test, you smear the ink all over the page. So my entire graduate school graduation was going to be based on whether I could do something that I was going to look like a third grader, and I was going to smear ink all over the place. Well, fortunately, my mom heard that on the story, and my mom was not of great financial means at the time of this. She bought me a fountain pen. And the reason a fountain pen is so important is because the ink dries very fast on a fountain pen if you use water-based ink. So you can take longhand exams, and they're great for left-handed people. This seemed like something out of the 1800s, but anyway, she bought me this fountain pen. Well, as a result of that fountain pen, I was able to pass the test, right? So I got out of graduate school and I got into the work world, and years and months go by. And recently, this summer, this is after a work history that you don't need to know about, my wife and I take a vacation, and it's a place called the Springs Hotel in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. And this is a picture of the Springs Hotel. It's right on the river. In each one of those little umbrellas is right near 25 hot springs. There's a big hot spring that comes out of the ground there. It's been there since the days of the Native Americans, discovered then. Fantastic hot springs. You go sit in these hot springs, and it's wonderful. So we took a trip to Pagosa Springs. There's another view of what the place looks like. Beautiful little hotel. And we stayed in this room in the Pagosa Springs Hotel, and we stayed there for a couple of days. And then we left in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, we drive out. And this is kind of what the hotel room looked like. There's two sides of the hotel, a less expensive side and a more expensive side. We stayed in the less expensive side. This is what the room looked like. Well, unfortunately, when I walked out of the door, I was the last one out of the hotel room. I left my backpack on the bed that looked just like the bed that you're seeing right now. I didn't realize that. We drove 5 hours back to Denver, and I realized, oh my God, I left my backpack. And that's about how I felt when you see this, this picture. I left my backpack. Well, okay. I called the hotel and I said, I'm so sorry. This was such a stupid thing to do. I left my backpack on the hotel, on the bed. Can you, let's figure out a way. Can you FedEx it to me? Or if I have to, I'll come down and pick it up. And in the backpack was my MacBook computer, not the one I'm on right now, but a MacBook computer, an iPad, camera accessories, a whole bunch of other stuff in this little blue backpack. And unfortunately, the fountain pen that my mother had given me was in that bag. And before I left London, I found this man who looked like, if you've ever seen Harry Potter, he looked like the old man who sold the wands in Harry Potter. And he was about that old. And he had hand engraved into the little gold stem my name. So it's not like I could just go buy another fountain pen that looked the same. This guy looking like Ollivander had written my name in this pen. I was like, oh my God. I have all the other stuff. If you have to replace it, you can. This pen is stuck in this bag. So I call them. They said, oh, well, we haven't seen it yet. And I said, okay, well, on Monday morning, when the housekeeping people all come in, please let me know what the story is and we'll do it. Monday comes, I don't hear anything back from the hotel. And I call and say, hey, did you find the bag? Well, nobody turned it in. And we've checked everywhere, and we don't know what to tell you. And they sounded really, kind of torn up about it because obviously a guest just lost something. So I don't know what to do at that point. I called the manager back a couple of times. This goes for a couple of days. And finally, the hotel manager, the person I spoke to named Todd, said, we can't find it. We don't know what to do. And I said, well, can you check with those little cards and stick in the door and see who was in the room? And they found out who was in the room. But they said, well, we've spoken to the people who could have been in there and nobody's seen it. Nobody's seen your bag. So now I don't know what to do. I figure like, well, I'm going to have to call the police or something, right? To get a police report so I can go and get the insurance back on this thing. So that's what I do. I call the police, and the police in Pagosa Springs are wonderful people, but it's not a very big town. And the policeman I spoke to, his name was Scott. And it turns out he was a retired policeman. He only worked 2 days a week. And I caught him on the second of those 2 days. So I went to describe, I said, look, I was staying in a hotel, and and I told him the whole story. And he stopped me and he said, what hotel were you staying in? And I said, oh, it was at the Springs, the one with all the hot springs. And he paused and he said, oh, that's going to be kind of tough. That hotel has a history. Well, what's a history? And he said, well, it was started by a guy who used to be a race car driver. And in fact, I think he was a Formula One race car driver, but he wasn't a very good race car driver, it turns out. But what he was really good at is running drugs. Now, this is all from a retired policeman. I don't know the full story of this, but this is what he told me. So originally, the hotel was built by a guy who was a race car driver, wasn't very good, and then somehow got connected to the drug cartels. By the way, this hotel is not very far from New Mexico, which is where Breaking Bad was actually filmed. So he says, look, I don't know now what the recurrent situation is with the hotel, but before, they didn't like the police walking in there and talking to him. And so I don't know what to tell you. I said, no. And then he says, since I'm only part-time, you'll have to call me back in 5 days when I come back to work. Now, in that bag is my MacBook, which has the manuscript of the book that I was working on that was meant to be published in January, which is, by the way, was published in January. So the book is in there, the pen is in there. It's a horrible situation. So I let him go. He's doing his thing, and he's going to go talk to the hotel, and I don't hear back from him. And I think, well, okay, the bag was stolen. The electronic stuff is all gone. Maybe the pen, somebody took the pen to an antique store, because who the heck wants a fountain pen with somebody else's name on it? So I get the list of all the antique stores in Pagosa Springs, and I look them all up. I start calling one after another. So this is about a day after I talked to the policeman. And the third antique store, the woman answers the phone and she says, oh, wow, that's so sad. We haven't seen your pen. But, my husband is a policeman and he knows about these kind of things. I said, don't tell me your husband's name is Scott. And it was. So her husband is sitting next to her at the antique store, who is off duty now because he's not working, right? So he's off duty on those off duty days. Anyway, she says the pawn shop called us this morning and said someone is trying to sell stolen goods. Maybe they've got your laptop and your iPad. So I called the pawn shop. And the pawn shop says, well, as a matter of fact, we kicked a guy out and his girlfriend earlier this week trying to sell stolen stuff. Well, do you know who it was? Yeah. As a matter of fact, yeah, the manager knew them. They had come in a month before. And a month before, they tried to sell a bunch of stolen stuff, a stolen TV. I said, well, that's great. And then he says to me, and she left a nasty review on Google about the store. So I go to Google, I look her up, I find the high school she went to. So I get the name of the person who filed the report, and I call the Pagosa Springs Hotel. Does this person work for you? I'm all excited. No, they don't. All right, so this game is over at this point, right? The bag is gone, everything's gone. I'm about to file a police report. I have to go buy a new Mac. So I buy a new Mac computer. That was expensive. Got my new Mac. I'm sitting on the couch. I open up the screen. I'm doing whatever I'm doing, and ping, an alarm goes off on my Mac, and it says, your iPad is in the parking lot of the Pagosa Springs Hotel. And I went, well, that's exciting. I forgot to say this. On my phone, The day after we had left the hotel, I got an indicator that the MacBook was still at the hotel. That was like an hour and a half after we left. So I knew it was there. I didn't leave it at some gas station. So now I get an indication my iPad is in the parking lot of the hotel. But now roll forward, it's Sunday and the manager's off of the hotel. And it's been 6 days since I left all this stuff. The batteries have got to be dying, right? So I call the hotel immediately and they say, well, Todd is not here. It's the weekend. But the spa manager, Jennifer, is here. So Jennifer comes to the phone and Jennifer says, as spa managers would, I'm so sorry. It sounds like your inner harmony has been disturbed. She didn't really say that, but it was some very soothing thing. And I said, my iPad, my MacBook, it's in your parking lot. I can see it on the map, right in the middle of the parking lot. And she said, well, we went out to the parking lot and we didn't see an iPad. I'm not kidding. I said, no, it's probably in the trunk of one of the cars. Somebody stole it, right? And she says, well, rightly so. She can't open up the trunk of random people's cars looking for a missing iPad. So, you know, in the roller coaster ride of ups and downs, I'm heartbroken again. Right now, it's gone. At this point, there's nothing that can be done. Jennifer can give me a great deep tissue massage, but she can't get my iPad back. So I'm kind of done. I'm still sitting on the couch in the same position I was before. Jennifer can't help me. The policeman can't help me. And my iPad pings again. And my iPad, this is on Find My iPad on Apple or Find My App device. My iPad is moving and it is moving down the road to Durango, Colorado. So I'm sitting there watching, and I kid you not, watching my iPad hit at various Wi-Fi points along the way, indicating that it's in Durango, Colorado. So at 9 p.m., my iPad stops in Durango, Colorado on a Sunday night, and it's in a duplex, on one side of a duplex. I can see it on Google Maps where it is, and it's pinging brightly. So what do you do at 9 p.m. on a Sunday night? So I found a deputy marshal in the middle of Durango, Colorado, a young guy named Ray Moreland, who says to me on the phone, and Ray wants to be a hero. Jennifer wanted to be a hero. Todd, the hotel manager, wanted to be a hero, find this thing and resolve this, but none of them could. So Ray says, and you know, Ray, I didn't know this at the time, Ray's a young guy, motivated, deputy federal marshal. That's a big deal. Sunday night, he says to me, well, I'm sorry, Chris, to tell you, but the way these circumstances, when things like this happen, they don't usually work out very well. So I'll call you back if I can make anything happen. 9 p.m. I'm still sitting on the couch, in the same couch. A few minutes go by. I'm like, well, okay, this isn't going anywhere. 15 minutes later, Ray Moreland calls me on the phone and he says, so Chris, what's in your blue bag? And I said, well, I had this inventory, and a MacBook and an iPad, and I got all this right. And then he stops me and he says, what's in that little blue bag? And I said, that is my pen. That's the pen I told you about. It's in the blue bag. And he unzips, I couldn't see him, but he unzips the blue bag. He pulls out the pen. And he said, Chris, I have all your stuff. I'll take it back to the field marshal office. I'll call you tomorrow. I couldn't believe it. He hangs up. I watch my bag as the dying, waning moments of the battery of my iPad are about to expire. I watch my bag move to the deputy or the federal marshal's office in Durango, Colorado. The next day I talk to him and he says, well, I've got your bag and we took care of the person. There's been, charges filed and all that. So that's happening with the person who, by the way, worked at that hotel, right? She was a housekeeper at that hotel. And he says, how'd you like to get your bag back? And I said, well, Ray, I really need that. Can I come down and pick it up? And he says, well, I'm off on Thursday and Friday, but if you come down, that was the only time I could come. I'll come into work on Thursday, right? So this was the antique store. This is the pawn shop on the screen. I forgot to show you these. This is the stolen TV that the person tried to sell. I walked through my Facebook and I talked about fine. And here's actually the Pagosa Springs on the screen. Here's the Pagosa Springs hotel parking lot right off my phone, showing where the iPad actually was. And I talked to you about the spa manager. I got really carried away telling you this story. And here's the actual location of where the iPad was. I blocked off the street address so you wouldn't see. This is all showing up on my individual phone. Okay, so here is Deputy Moreland, who showed up on his day off to hand me back my computer and my bag. I couldn't have been happier with Deputy Moreland. I asked him to show you his gun and his badge. And what I asked Deputy Moreland was, how did you get the bag back? And this is where Deputy Moreland's heroics shine brightly. He's a young guy, I mean, at least I think he's a young guy compared to me. He doesn't have a search warrant. He's got to walk up to the door of someone on Sunday night and accuse them of theft, right? Now, that's not bang bang police work. That's called psychology. That's called dedicated to want to make something happen well. And that's exactly what he did. So he walks to the door and he says, I'm here looking for some missing items, MacBook, an iPad. And the person who answers the door says, oh, I don't know, I have no idea what you're talking about. And Deputy Moreland is about to walk away, and he's standing in his uniform at the time, right? Not just this T-shirt. He's standing in his uniform, and he's got his gun and all that. And he says, well, one more thing, kind of like a TV show. One more thing. Anybody here happen to work in Pagosa Springs? And the person says, she does. And they pointed to the person. At that point, she panicked. She suddenly realized she'd been had. No search warrant, no eyewitness evidence. He gets her to give up the bag. So that's what happened. And the only way Deputy Moreland could do that is because technology enabled him and handed it to him in a way that he could execute on his job. He wants to be a policeman who gets things back. He wants to be heroic. He wants people like me, citizens, to get our stuff back. But he can't do it if he doesn't have the technology to enable him. And that's exactly what Deputy Moreland was able to do. Todd, the hotel manager, same story. He wanted to be a hero. It's a new management team at the hotel. They know about the legacy reputation, but the hotel is really well run now. Ethical, great people trying to do a great thing. But they can't do it without the right technology to back them up. So Deputy Moreland's now my buddy. And here's the final end of the story. So we drive back, and you got to go back through Pagosa Springs in order to get back to Denver. So I'm driving back through Pagosa Springs, and I stop to see Todd. And this is the hotel manager. And we're in the nice side of the hotel right now. I stop to see Todd, and he's happy. And he says, Chris, we took care of the situation. That person no longer works here as of this phone situation with the deputy marshal. All is well. What can we do to make it up to you? Well, as it turns out, he offered us 2 nights in the nice side of the hotel at a beautiful suite at a later time, which we did, and it was fantastic. I recommend this hotel highly. Wonderful place to go. And just as we were picking up our stuff and walking out the door and we're going to drive off to Denver, he says to me, there's just one thing. Can you show me the pen? And I did. And I pulled the pen out of the bag and I said, that is the pen that this whole story is all about. Ancient technology that was only recovered from new technology, intelligent automation, and humans being helped to be heroes. This is what the nicer suites look like. I think I showed you the other one, right? So the nicer suites are a lot nicer. So the end of this story is we can all be heroes in our own ways without technology. But if you have the right technology, you can be elevated to a level of heroism that makes you go home at night and, like Deputy Moreland, with the box of chocolate my wife gave Deputy Moreland to thank him for his time, you can go home feeling like a hero. And all the people who work for you in little or big ways can go home feeling like heroes if you help them use the technology to enable them. And that's what I mean by noble automation now. It's helping humans be heroes. That is the end of that presentation, which was not planned for the day, but now we're at the end of the session, and I'd like to say to everybody, thank you for paying attention to that. Thank you for listening. Let me put that away. You can probably now see my screen in some way, right? Not that that matters. Okay. So I'd like everybody to come back at the top of the hour. You get a little extra long coffee break. If anybody would like to know anything more about that, of course, you can go to here. You can send me an email at chris@nobleautomationnow.com. And I'll be happy to give you the backstory of that crazy Pagosa Springs thing if you'd like. If not, we will see you all at the top of the hour for number 1. Then we have 2 and 3 sessions to close out BTOES Financial Services 2022. We will see you then. Bye-bye.